I continue. My microphone decided to die, so I had to change the microphone. So yes, I was saying that, yeah, back then, people could only access this knowledge orally. Parenthesis, how was the learning happening from the teacher to the person that eventually would get the ijaza? Many ways. In some occasions were at home. So the pupil or the student was going to the house of the teacher. Note here, there were occasions where the student will live with the teacher. Why? Because the student will come from faraway place and they will live with the teacher. There were other cases where the teacher will have some kind of, in madrasa or in a mosque, they will go to a public space and people will go and listen to them. There were also occasions where teachers will travel the world and they will stop from village to village, from city to city, and this was a big event, such and such teacher comes to our village or to our city, and they will stay there for a few days, and they will go in the public spaces, usually in the mosque of the village or the city, and they will talk and people will listen to them. Bear this in mind, because this is important. This notion, what do I mean? This teacher could stay in this city for 5 days or for 2 weeks or for a month or for 2 months, and then they will go away. But those people that they had attended his classes or his lessons, they will get an ijaza. Okay, they had learned. Now, whether the ijaza will be an actual ijaza or they will claim they had the right to teach because they had heard such and such scholar, this is a different story. Again, this is not a tutorial. I will not go down into the details, but I will go into examples. I will give you examples of how ijaza, especially in the 12th century Common Era, started losing its value and its validity and its worth technically. And I will go to the most extreme examples. So technically, someone had to study with enough time with a teacher to learn something. Okay, we agree on that. Was this always the case? No, it wasn't. We have cases where people, actually, I will read for you the sources. I will give you the sources for you to go and do further research if you want, and then you will understand what we're talking about. So, let's start with the most mind-blowing example of ijaza that I don't consider it valid, but if you do, may God bless you, is ijazas that they were given to people that they had never met the teacher. They had never been in the physical proximity of this teacher. So it was an ijaza given by correspondence, perhaps, a letter. Many people, they were sending letters to teachers, and they were like, oh, can you send me an ijaza? So the two most striking examples is one, ijazas that they were being sold. So I am the teacher, I have the knowledge, I'm in my city, in my village, in my house, and then you send me a letter and you say, okay, I will give you so much money to just give me an ijaza. And this was happening. It was not very common, and but it has happened. We have the sources. Now, parenthesis, here we need to understand that when I say it's not very common, means that we don't have too many references or mentions of this practice into books, into primary sources. That doesn't mean that it was not happening often. It means that people did not write it down. We always need to be conscious about the difference between the letter and the law, between what is written, what is preserved as evidence, as primary source, what was actually happening, okay? The other thing that I'm pretty sure you cannot beat me on that is that there have been occasions, recorded by scholars, not scholars, by teachers themselves, where ijazas were given to unborn fetuses, to creatures, to humans that, when the ijaza was issued, were inside their mother's uterus. How this was happening? Remember when I told you that scholars will travel from village to village and will preach in public for a week, a month, and the locals will go and listen to them. Some of these locals were women. Some of these women were getting ijazas, and their unborn child would get ijaza. I want you to pause the video at this point and tell me, how do you feel about that? And of course, I know that there are some bros out there that they are, oh, what is she talking about? So, evidence. Because facts don't care about our feelings. Ibn al-Salah, who died in 1245, 13th century, he wrote a very famous book today, Muqaddimah, where he discusses unusual types of ijaza, including the fetus in utero, al-majin fi batn ummih. That's the title. So, I want you to pay attention here. We have a very famous, learned person of the 13th century, who recorded different types of ijazas, because as the years were passing, ijaza developed, as I told you, in different sciences. So people started writing books about ijazas. That's how complicated the topic of ijaza became. So he explicitly addresses the case in his discussion, and I have here the Arabic quote, which I will not read to you, but you can find it. I will translate it to you. He says, among them, the unusual ijazas, is the ijaza granted to the fetus in its mother's womb. Some hadith scholars have practiced it and allowed it. It is as a form of seeking blessing and nothing more. Now you will tell me, here, you see, it's like a blessing, and ijaza is a blessing. No, ijaza was never supposed to be a blessing. It was supposed to be, as I said earlier, a permission, an authorization for someone to become a teacher, to become the successor of the Prophet, okay? Or a successor of the Prophet. And also, nothing was stopping the mother or the fetus that later will become a person to actually claim the authority of the ijaza. Yeah, it was a blessing, but it was giving authority. You can make money out of that. You could alleviate the level and the status of your family, of your life as well. Second example, we jump to the 15th century, 2 centuries later. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, very, very famous. If you don't know him, go and learn about him. He was a hadith master. And I like the title. It's not scholar or something. It's master. Okay. He mastered. He was very good in the science of hadith. So he reportedly, Asqalani, he granted an ijaza to his own grandson, Ali ibn Hajar, while the grandson was still in the womb of Asqalani's daughter. Specifically, he wrote in Mujam al-Mujamin, or his Thabat, he mentioned, and I granted ijaza to the son of my daughter while he was still a fetus in her womb, seeking barakah and to attach him to the chain of transmission. Sanad, isnad, the singular, sanad, the plural, okay? Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that the ijaza, other than the names and the science, was also mentioning the names of the transmitters. Like if I was teaching, or if someone was teaching hadith, will say that I, such and such, heard from such and such, who heard from such and such, until they will go back to the Prophet. So as the centuries were passing, an ijaza was a very lengthy document. So this is Asqalani, who did it and recorded it for his grandson. Let's go to, we remain in the same century. We go approximately 50 years later. Well, we have Al-Shahawi. In his work, Allan bil-Tawbih, he mentions the practice of granting ijaza to fetuses. He says first of all, he says that it had become very common by the 15th century. So we saw at the 13th century is the first recorded incident. Bear in mind, if they recorded it on the 13th century, that means that was practiced earlier, was being practiced earlier. But then by late 15th century, it has become a very common practice. So not only nobody criticized it or found it unusual, but as the centuries were passing, this was becoming very common practice. So that's what he says. Al-Sakhawi says that it was very common, and it had become how common it had become to grant ijaza even to unborn children. And I quote now Al-Sakhawi from the book I told you, page 176, the Arabic quote. I will translate it for you. They even granted ijaza to the fetus in its mother's womb, and this became very widespread. One of the things that we need to contemplate on this aspect is that not every person who was interested or inclined or intellectually capable to be a teacher or a learned person. So what was this authority that a person that has not even been born, a person that we don't know whether he's intelligent or not, a person that we don't know whether he wants to go down that path, why we give him authority and we put his name into the isnad, into the chain of transmission, because that was happening. This unborn fetus once was being born, and from the age of 5, 6, 7, we have people that who was it that was it Asqalani? That from the age of 7, he was considered to be an expert in Qur'an. So can you imagine this? The name of this unborn child is already in the isnad without the child being born yet. It's crazy. The last example is Al-Suyuti. This is early 16th century. So between Al-Sakhawi, who died in 1497, and Suyuti, who died in 1505, these were contemporary. They lived at the same era. So Suyuti was someone that was orphan. So he grew up in Egypt, but he was of Persian origin, as an orphan, not orphanage, in a madrasa, in a mosque. So Suyuti was the one that by the age of 7, he had memorized the Quran, and he was, an expert in Quran. And there is a point here with Suyuti. Suyuti, he lived for 60 years. He died when he was 60 years old. And he has ijazas from 150 teachers. Now, I want you to calculate, even if we accept that he was considered a teacher at the age of 7, which today is crazy, but let's accept it for the sake of argument. We also know that Suyuti, in his mid-40s, he left the world. He became... he secluded himself from the people. He had a few fights, a few feuds with some Sufis. Anyway, that's not for me. It's not for this video. But he retreated from public life. Let's put it that way. So even if we accept that from the age of 10, let's put 10 to make it round, until 60, until his last breath, which I don't think it was until then, he was learning for 50 years. That means that every year he was getting 3 ijazas. That means that he was completing sciences with teachers within 4 months. Anyone and everyone that has, you have done a degree, a bachelor's degree, how long does it take you to complete it, to master a discipline? Not 4 months. Also, because we have the recorded names of the teachers that Suyuti earned his ijazas from, we know that most of them lived in faraway places that Suyuti never visited. Remember when I told you ijazas through correspondence? So these elements are elements that you need to bear in mind. You need to know these things about Ijaza before you dare to come and question me, because I don't have an Ijaza. And it's okay. Anyway, not because I don't have not question me. You can question me. Alhamdulillah, question me. Habibi, question me. I'm ready. Please, I'm prepared to question me. But don't question my knowledge or my ability and capacity and legitimacy to talk about Islam because I don't have an Ijaza. It doesn't work like that. So let's go back to Suyuti. While Suyuti did not receive an Ijaza in his mother's womb, I mean, he was an orphan. We don't know what happened with his, anyway, the point is not about his parents. He reports that the others did receive Ijaza in the womb of his mother, and that very young children were routinely granted Ijaza. In his Tadrib al-Rawi, quoting earlier sources, he writes, some were granted Ijaza while still in their mother's womb. An Ijaza would be written in his name and lineage with success to God. We have so yeah, I will stop here with quotations about how Ijazas were given to very young children of age 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, in these occasions, in a biography, biographers are people that they have recorded such incidents. So medieval biographers of Islam. When these teachers will travel to villages and houses and cities, everyone who was attending or listening to them was getting an Ijaza. It could be a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, an unborn child, the mother of the unborn child, the father of the unborn child that was at home because the spiritually. Okay, I exaggerate here. It was not about the father. But yeah, everyone, the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, the 5-year-old would get an Ijaza. Not in every occasion, but in many occasions. Again, why? Because these these teachers that were traveling from place to place, they were not doing it just for fun. Okay, they will get material benefits out of that, usually in gifts. In the early, okay, let's clarify that. So we do have incidents where Ijazas were actually sold. I could buy an Ijaza, but usually it will be in the form of gifts. At some point, it did become also in the form of payment, but it will be a gift. It will be, let's say, a set of clothes or food or jewelry or, an object. But later on, it did become monetized. So how do we know that we're monetized? If you read Jonathan Berkey's The Transmission of Knowledge in Medieval Cairo, he discusses discusses how the commercialization of education led to less rigorous standards in some madrasas, and he cites, because ijazas were given in madrasas as well. I hope you know what a madrasa is. Berkey cites cases where ijazat, the plural of ijaza, were issued based on reputation or correspondence, which is in the case of Suyuti, rather than direct study. And George Makdisi, that somehow God orchestrated in such a way that I have Makdisi's book. I didn't intend to. I was not aware of his importance in the past, but I have the book in my hands. So George Makdisi, whose book is about the medieval Islamic education, he does mention that some ijazas were granted without instruction and sometimes for payment, particularly when scholars were under financial pressure or when students sought prestige. So these were the factual elements about an ijaza. Let's take off the glasses because they reflect the light. Why do I bother myself too much with that topic? Because it is time that Muslims, you get to understand, and I'm a Muslim as well, but I know it already, that every Muslim, let's put it that way, every Muslim needs to understand what exactly has happened in the long 14 centuries of Islamicate history. And you need to know, for you to not get easily impressed by Arabic terminology and by notions and by titles and all, in the past everything was amazing. In the past the people were wonderful. In the past, the past, and we have to go to the past because the past is amazing, and the past and the present and the future and all the tenses. There has been no time on earth where humans were amazing, everything was perfect, and we need to go back and imitate it. It hasn't. It's the human factor. Humans corrupt everything. That's the fact. That's the truth. So let's go back to the topic of Ijaza. To give you a simile to understand what I think when any of you comes under my social media or my YouTube channel, my YouTube videos, and you say, oh, you cannot talk about that because we don't have Ijaza. It's like if I'm talking about how to better prepare yourself for traveling. Okay, you go for holidays. And I'm talking to you about how to better prepare yourself for traveling. And you come to me and you tell me, you don't have the right to talk about that because you don't have a camel. And that's how the Prophet was traveling with, or that's how not even the Prophet, peace be upon him, that's how the first Muslims were traveling, with camels. And because you don't have a camel, you don't know how to, you don't have the right to talk about traveling. Habib Alb. There has been 14 centuries. Traveling has changed. And yes, there are people today that they do have camels and they love their camels and they travel with their camels, and subhanallah, and God bless them to have many camels. But the idea that because I don't have a camel, I cannot talk about traveling. Do you get it? I mean, because when you talk about Ijaza and knowledge and the learned and the ulama, that is like, oof, you don't really know what you're talking about. That's why you talk about it like that. But can you see the reference? I mean, I know how to drive. Okay, I know how to drive a motorcycle. I know how to drive a car. I know how to drive a truck. People know how to fly airplanes, how to navigate boats. We don't all need to go back to the camel. It's good if you have a camel. And you should know about the camel if you have a camel. But you can know about traveling without having the camel. That is the development of education from the ancient times to the medieval times to the modern times. Today, we can read the Qur'an. There are plenty of publications of the Qur'an in many languages, in many translations. We don't need an Ijaza to know the Qur'an. Today, we have many books of hadith that we can purchase, many translations, many languages. I don't need an Ijaza to learn the hadith or to know the hadith. I don't even need a book, okay? I can go online and I can find all the books. I can download all the books of the hadith online. I have done it. I mean, I have the hard copies because I like the paper. But I have it. The first contact, the latest was Malik's. The Maliki school, the book of Malik, Imam Malik, Mutawa or Muwata, Mutawa, I think. I always confuse the pronunciations. You can find all the books online. You can download them for free. Knowledge today is for free and it's easy. It's on your laps, literally. You cannot come today and say that I cannot talk about Islam and about Hadith and about Quran because I don't have an Ijaza. I don't need an Ijaza. And if you believe that those who have, oh, by the way, there are some, okay, when the modern or the contemporary form of education, where all the people now, because education is compulsory in the entire world, Muslim majority countries. So now everyone can read. Okay, so when this form of education was established, the madrasas, the traditional form of education, was totally invalidated. I mean, you can do it as a hobby, you can do it for fun, you can do it in aim to pride yourself that, oh, I have studied with such and such. But it's it's exactly like the camel. You can travel with the camel, but this will be an option. You do it because you are peculiar and you want to, that's your hobby, you want the experience. It's not because you actually, this is the only way of traveling, or this is the only valid way of traveling. Another thing, I have met many people. It starts becoming tiring. Many famous Muslims. This one was not a famous, was someone from where was it? Qatar, I think, that he was priding himself that he has ijazas from Sheikh Cucumber and Sheikh who had learned from Sheikh Banana, who had learned from Sheikh Pineapple, and was good. But he didn't have it in writing. He had his ijaza verbally. Which ijaza verbally? What? I mean, where's the evidence? The whole point of ijaza was to have it on something, written on something, so that you will have an evidence. Ijazas were not oral. Ijazas were in writing. So there are people today that they will claim that they have ijazas, and they will ask to teach you things online or offline, claiming that they have ijaza. But do they really have an ijaza? Because today it's very difficult. So if someone comes from Qatar, for example, and say to me that I have ijaza from Ibn Muhammad, of Ibn Asad, of Abu Obama, etc., do I know these people? Do I know whether they exist or whether they're your cousins and your grandpas? And it's very difficult. So, and also lately there is a young person from South, I think it's South Asian, that he promotes, he tries to teach and give grant ijazas to his students online, which is something that, okay, this is one of the sad realities. Everyone and anyone from the Arab speakers do that, but also the Asian Muslims, especially for Egypt, as I know. Every Egyptian, since they have Facebook and YouTube, every Egyptian, they contact me. They contact me on a weekly basis to teach you the Qur'an. The girls want to teach Qur'an to the women and the children, and the boys, the males, want to teach the Qur'an to everyone, just because they believe they speak Arabic now. They don't speak the Quranic Arabic, but anyway, yeah. So you see how these and why do they do that? Because it's easy money and it's a lot of money. So for an Egyptian, if they charge 10 pounds, 10 British pounds, or $10, for them it's a lot of money in their economy. And they sell their origin technically, which is very sad. And many people fall for this, especially new converts. But alhamdulillah, this is barakah from Allah. If Allah makes some people pay them for that, let's do it. What do I want to say? Knowledge has always been commodified. Ijazas were supposed to safeguard knowledge. It was supposed to be an evidence that someone had actually studied until the 10th, 11th century. From that point onwards, so 10 centuries, 1,000 years ago, okay? For the last 1,000 years, ijazas were no longer what they used to be or what they were supposed to be. So I will finish this educational, I hope, video. And I will tag it every time someone will come and, try to invalidate me. I will put that video as my response. And now you see why I couldn't type it. Be careful when you go to conferences and you ask naive questions or when you try to invalidate people on social media with naive statements, because you don't touch me, you don't bother me, you don't invalidate me. I mean, I know that that's your intention, but it's not working. What are you doing? What you are doing is you expose your ignorance, because anyone who has this basic knowledge about ijaza, this is the basic. I didn't give you, I didn't give you quotes, but I didn't go into depth. I could go. I can create an entire module only on ijaza. This is the basic things. If you know these things, you cannot possibly make an ijaza the utmost authority of knowledge transmission, and whoever does not have ijaza cannot talk about Islam. What are you talking about? anyone with basic knowledge about Islam and Islamic sciences will laugh at your ignorance. So that's what you do. I mean, you want to do it, Habibi. I cannot stop you. But yeah, your comments, your questions say more about you than what they say about the person you address. That is all for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being patient with me for being absent from the channel for 2 months, but it was for a good reason. And soon enough, I will start the project with book reviews. So stay tuned, spread the message, invite your friends to watch the videos. And until the next time, take care of yourselves and learn, read, educate yourselves. From me, for now,